Madam President. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, family, my name is Rolf Charles Barkley Roberts. I'm the first-born son to Ida Roberts Johansson and Rolf Johansson. That's the Swedish branch. My mother, in turn, is the first-born child of May Roberts Barkley and Charles B. Roberts Sr. Unfortunately, my mother, she would have wished, of course, to be here. She couldn't due to health issues, so I'm here in her place. I'm happy I am. I'm very honored to be here representing the Swedish side of the family in this tribute to my grandmother, May Barkley Roberts. I'm here with my partner and the mother of my 3 children, Anki, who's in the back. I also want to say that the Swedish side of the family also consists of my sister Mona Hall, her husband Mikael, and their 3 children, you can be here. My brother Eric Barkley, his wife Jenny, and their 4 children. So they're here in spirit. I think also watching the link. I just want to say something also about the Barkley name. The story in itself. That was approved by my grandmother and her sister Elizabeth Barkley Cooper, that visited Sweden. And my brother and I wanted the Barkley name as a part of our proud heritage, and also in combination with our very typically Swedish names. I had Rolf, that's very Swedish. My brother Eric, very common in Sweden as well. Together with Barkley, demonstrates our proud heritage, being Swedish Iberians. What a combination, right? All right. I'm also here representing all of Momo's, my grandmother's many grandchildren, who couldn't be here. I just want to say that. But we also have several present. Please rise. Let's see where you are. The grandchildren present. Thank you. We also have, I know it was touched upon before, a lot of relatives that have actually traveled from abroad coming here, which we're proud of. I think we're about 50 or 60 behind one of them. There are numerous people, so it's a large family and a lot of love. So it's very honorable to stand here and pay tribute to May Barkley Roberts. Okay. Let's see if you can grab it. I want to tell you a little story now. Right? We're trying to do it in English. You see? No, small speaking. 2 years old. They sent me from Sweden to Liberia to the Coppertown residence. My grandmother and my grandfather. So I was there, and I have my caretaker Edith, my auntie Juanita, and my cousin Ari, who's somewhere there. We were fooling around with a lot of other people too. There, Ari. So I also want to tell you that not knowing English at this time, I could hardly speak anyway, being 2 years old, but Swedish was the national language for me since I was born in Sweden. So I called my grandmother for the Swedish name for grandmother on one's mother's side, which is mormor. You see? We get that. You see, I call my grandfather, the late Charles B. Sr., Robert Sr., for morfar. Morfar. See? So those are Swedish words. Would be good to know. I give you a crash course in Swedish. One could say that on the father's side, the grandfather, or grandmother on the father's side, is Papa, father's father, or farmor, father's mother. So now you know a bit of Swedish. Of course, this is something I'm very proud of. I just wanted to mention that because it's my, now the origin and the actual source of the name, which became synonymous with May Barkley Roberts, Momo. We all know her as Momo. And it's actually a Swedish word. So now you know that. I just want to mention also that several years later, I lived 5 years in Buchanan, the Lamco project, so I went to primary school. I guess that's where my Liberian accent kind of stuck. Primary school, grade 1 to 4. And my parents worked within the Lamco project. Before handing over to my dear cousin Juan here, I just want to say that these experiences, living in Liberia, various periods of time, being a Swedish guy, quite a contrast, but it has formed me as a person. I feel that the way I view the world, the way I view people, perspective, is something that's pretty unique. That's what I feel. Momo, there's so lot to say about Momo. We have a lot of treasured memories. If I keep it in general, I'm going to say that I remember my Momo as an extraordinarily kind and generous person with a strong will, both in heart and mind. I think that's just been a theme throughout the different tributes and speeches. High integrity and also a very non-judgmental approach. I mean, my father being Swedish white wasn't self-evident to just go through that. So here I am, by the way. I want to end up this with reading a poem which I think illustrates the outlook, perspective, and approach that Momo had to life.
Time is against us.
All right. 1 minute. All right, I'll read this poem. You can shed tears because they are gone, or you can smile because they're dead. You can close your eyes and pray they will come back, or you can open your eyes and see all they have for you. Your heart can be empty because you can't see them, or you can be full of the love to share. You can turn your back on tomorrow and live yesterday, or you can be happy for tomorrow because of yesterday. You can remember only that they are gone, or you can cherish the memory and let it live on. You can cry and close your mind and feel empty, or you can do what they want. Smile, open your heart, laugh, and go on.
I am speaking on behalf of many people here, each of whom would have 5 minutes, and so I will speak on all of the behalf, so please hold it. Thank you, Mabu, my older cousin. My name is Juan, but some of you may know me as Sandy. I arrived last night, and while I'm tired, I would not have missed this for the world. I am Juanita's second son. Some would say the handsome one. In all seriousness, I'm here to say a few words on behalf of the Roberts family, mainly because some felt I would be able to get through this without crying. I hope they're right. But I speak on behalf of Momo's legacy, including the several children that I have been blessed to call my aunts and my uncles. Bishop May Roberts needs to mourn her lost several children. Ida and Rob Johansson, Juanita Ramirez, excuse me, Charles and Kathleen Roberts, Rookie and Joseph Weah, Hannah Daniels and Sandy Roberts, Imelda Garwo, Martha and Rich Lucambo, Hawkeye and Isabel Roberts, Grace Minor, Genevieve and Manju Freeman, among others. The family goes on and on. Several brothers and sisters, many of whom you've seen today, Gerald Barkley, Anthony Barkley, Emmanuel and Bella Barkley, several stepbrothers and sisters, Otis Raines, Myra Morris, Tube Barkley, many nieces, nephews, several grandchildren and great-grandchildren, several grand and great-great-grandnephews and nieces, and several cousins and a host of spiritual children, of whom Momo was so proud. Indeed, we are a proud family that has been richly blessed to have Momo and Wolfa, present in our lives. Together, they led by example and taught us to trust God, and to always remember your family, and to love this imperfect Republic of Liberia. She also taught us to temper criticism with kindness and to hold tight to the hands of those two little girls, Grace and Patience, whom she represented so well. To stand in line and receive the blessings and to never give up, which has been my personal motto in life. To her children, she was their rock. My mother, Juanita, recalls a story of how she would go and pick her up at elementary school and rescue her from beatings, some deserved, I'm sure. I recall one instance in America when I was heading to a summer festival called Summerfest. It was a hot day, and on this day I chose to wear a tank top, a singlet, not unlike you see basketball players wear in America and elsewhere. My grandmother watched me closely, like a lion does its prey. Before I could get to the door, she pounced, and I knew I was done for. Momo said, "Why are you going dressed like that?" I said, "Momo, I'm heading to the fair." And Momo said, "Not like that, you know." "But it's hot outside, Momo. What's wrong with the way I'm dressed?" And she looked at me in a very disapproving manner. And I know some of you have seen this look in Momo's eyes before. She said, "What I see is a naked man walking." And so I had to change my clothes. I also remember the comforts that she gave me when I was injured, many times, being the most accident-prone in the family. When she prayed over my wife when she was sick, when she told me it would be all right when I felt despair. Momo has always been there for me, so many of you, and this is her enduring legacy. Selflessness, service, sacrifice were her calling card, and love and her blessings were the reward we so desperately needed and cherished. There was also the tender side of Momo, the grandmother who often prayed over me and so many of you when we were sick, when we needed comfort in our darkest and saddest moments, who conveyed every day and every hour her enduring values, chief among them, love for God and love for others. You see, my grandmother did not need words, and although called to preach, she was not a woman of many. Her quiet fortitude and legendary stamina spoke volumes. For Momo, our loving Reverend and Bishop, it was through her actions, in my opinion, the most well-read, wisest person I've ever known. She was an avid reader and an active listener. They say your reputation is who and what people think you are, and your character is who you are when no one is looking. That is what character is revealed. Well, my friends, my grandmother had an excellent reputation and an even stronger character. One that was revealed in the darkest hours when we needed it most. She literally walked in the valley of the shadow of death in times of war and crisis and demonstrated true amazing grace. And that is her legacy. She was never prone to self-praise or coveted recognition. I often witnessed firsthand how she celebrated and practiced her faith behind closed doors at the earliest and latest hours of each and every day. For my grandmother, even the appearance of impropriety was not a good thing. I recall how she would not even drink apple juice out of a wine glass out of concern over the message it may convey, no matter how innocent the act. It is indeed hard to take the measure of a life so well lived. Excuse me. During the long Civil War, her children would often call her from their homes in the US and in Sweden to check on her. And in the end, it was they who were comforted and reassured that everything would be all right. I remember in 2003 vividly when fighting in Liberia intensified and had even reached the gates of our home in Kokotown. I was a young lawyer then, desperate to save my grandmother from what I believed was her certain end, where she would meet her fate. And so I called upon powerful men, a future candidate for Vice President of the United States, a future White House Chief of Staff with whom I worked at my law firm, and a prominent U.S. senator. They all put me in touch with more powerful men. And soon, we made one phone call after another to secure safe passage for my mother, Momo, and my brother, among others. But Momo refused. And her refusal cascaded into my mother's and my brother's refusal for assistance, which actually made me look kind of crazy back in the States. They want to stay? People asked. And here I was thinking that I had all of these powerful connections. But you see, Momo had another powerful connection, and his name is Jesus. Jesus was not ready for Momo to flee. Instead, he wanted her to stay. Momo simply would not be moved. Trust me, it would have been far too easy for her to pick up and leave. But in her faith and conviction, she knew that Liberia was where she belonged and where she was needed at that time. She took great joy in the fact that God is everywhere, including Liberia. Why would I go to America when God is right here in Liberia? She would reason. And you know what? She was right. Her presence, her faith, her wisdom was just what the doctor ordered. You heard it here before. And I did not see it at the time, but I understand now Romans 8:31. When then shall we say to these things, if God is for us, who can be against us? My grandmother did not just read these words. She believed them. She lived them and was willing to die by them. The words that come to mind when describing my grandmother are kind, loyal, faithful, gracious, fair, classy, wise. You've heard them all before. She had an entrepreneurial spirit and a wonderful sense of humor. Excuse me. You guys are wrong. Offering her daughters and suitors lights, particularly if the lights were in the living room were too dim. She was a woman of great faith. We will always remember her for saying, all things work together for the good for those who love God. This is the first time I've been home in my life where tonight I will not be able to kiss upon the brow of my sweet grandmother, or kneel and pray with her, and catch her beautiful gaze and sweet smile. Momo lives and breathes in each one of us. I saw her last night, in fact, when I kissed my Auntie Wookie on the cheek and saw a glimpse of her beautiful profile. I felt her strength as I gazed upon my mother's smile and sensed her stoic strength. I felt her warm embrace when I hugged my Uncle Jospi, and the laughter through pain as I commiserated with my Auntie Ida in Sweden, who so desperately wanted to be here today, but for a serious health issue that prevented it from happening. Indeed, I felt the power and grace of her presence when I greeted my Auntie Imelda and my Auntie Myra, who have always been there for me as Momo has. I felt her warmth in seeing my cousin Elise last night, knowing how close she was to my sweet Aunt Elizabeth. And I felt her when I stepped foot on Liberian soil, a country to which Momo gave so much of her life that she was willing to sacrifice her own life for the sake of her fellow citizens, to fight for the survival of this experiment that we call Liberia, and we shall never take it for granted. She was a patriot in every sense of the word, and you and I are better off for it because of me. Your Excellency, Madam Vice President, Africa's Iron Lady, we are also proud to honor today Liberia's other Iron Lady, my grandmother. A firm, immovable, strong African woman whose roots were planted firmly in the soil and soul of Liberia the day the Barclays set sail to claim this sweet land of liberty as their home in 1865. And while the seeds of that proud family produced presidents, lawyers, doctors, poets, economists, senators, judges, reverends, a bishop, true patriots today, we recognize and honor the continuance of that legacy in celebrating the life of Mae Barkley Roberts, who would not abandon the very dream that brought them to these shores. It is hard to say goodbye to Momo, but as a family, we are assured of three things. She will bow in humble adoration when she meets her God and proclaim how great thou art. And what a day of rejoicing it will be when she is reunited with her first love, Wolfa Charles B. Roberts, her mother and father, her sisters and brothers, numerous family members, Mother Duke, Cousin Karina, and her childhood friends from Freetown. And last but not least, we have the blessed assurance that she leaves behind a powerful and lasting legacy. Let us not let her down.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.